Coach, not often you get these, kind of days in the midst of the season. What were you able to accomplish with your group today?
Well, just getting back to the detailed work, the slippage in the areas that we found there, obviously ball security, making sure we take care of the basketball, working on spacing, when to cut, where to cut, then some shooting in, but more than anything, it was the defensive side of the ball. Our ability to be in a stance, anticipate actions that are happening, getting deflections, getting after the basketball, and then finishing possessions out. There's a lot of things that we talked about and what we worked on.
Every game is important, but how is there extra importance or extra focus this next stretch of games with the trade deadline approaching?
No. Ultimately, we walk into every game preparing the best that we can to go out and play our best basketball, giving our guys an opportunity to be successful and putting them in the right position to be successful. Again, it's about how we prepare, how we're lined up for every single game, and we continue to take that one game at a time.
You mentioned trying to create some continuity, create some comfort. You obviously have a lot of guys coming back from injury, all at once. How important are these practices to kind of getting that group back together? We saw them a little bit on Sunday, obviously, but you got to build that consistency.
Well, just being able to throw different combinations out there. I think and that goes more along the lines of concepts more than it is about the plays. Understanding what we're trying to do offensively and defensively. So you understand when you're supposed to be the lone man, come across the lane to protect the rim. You understand on the extra pass when you pass and cut, where you're supposed to go on the spacing side. So not necessarily who you're out there with, but what you're asked to do when you're out there on the floor.
There's obviously been a lot of injuries. I think there's only been 3 lineups that have played 100 minutes together. Obviously that's not ideal, but how do you think this team has kind of handled that, or do you kind of hope that you'll be able to build some consistent playing groups for longer periods now?
Well, you would love to, build in more consistent groups, but at the end of the day, you just have to know that things happen throughout the NBA season. That's injury, that's sickness. You have to be prepared, and our guys have done a very good job of being prepared for the situations that they've been thrown in. So that goes credit to the coaches. That's to these guys putting the work in with film, as well as concentrating on the things that they need to do for this team to continue to try to reach a level of success.
There's a lot of talk about being locked in on a game-to-game basis, but you've got a group that isn't as experienced in playing into a postseason and all of that. So how do you manage that as a coach with a group that hasn't played this high-intensity basketball for this long of a period of time?
Well, to the point of experience, you have to go through it. I think any time that you have these situations and you can reflect back on the Brooklyn game, the Boston game, the series. That's why I think the in-season tournament was so great, because of the intensity and that the focus, the attention to detail that you have to have for those games is so important. So you can reflect back and say, okay, this is how we need to approach these games, because this is the way in which the basketball is going to be played from here on out.
And how do you manage these next couple weeks as the trade deadline approaches with just the uncertainty of what could happen?
I mean, it's the uncertainty of everything. There's things you can control and things you can't control. And what our guys and what we talked about today was you just have to focus on your body of work and our body of work and how we're trying to play. Regardless of what's happening, whether there's rumors out there of this, that, and the other, it really, you can't bog yourself down with that, because ultimately it is not in your control. What you can control is how hard you play every single time you touch the floor. You can control how much of a professional you are every time you walk into the building. You can control how much joy and energy and attitude you bring every time you step into the building.
I know every game is hard in the NBA, but based on every team's record right now, you guys have the friendliest schedule, or easiest, whatever word you want to use. Being over 500 at this point, does that give you some extra confidence knowing that the rest of the way you'll have a lot of quote-unquote?
Well, continuity and chemistry is most important for this group. Obviously guys coming back from injury and knowing exactly how we need to play. And then again, it just goes back to, are we playing the way we're supposed to be playing, and are we going to be playing our best basketball, come, April? And I think that's very important for this group to continue to understand.
Is there a goal for Markel to eventually play on back-to-back games?
Again, it goes back to what we talked about in the early training camp. We're going to continue to evaluate it as he goes from game to game and see how he feels.
What was Gary able to do today?
Gary's able to do, again, continued individual work with no contact.
Obviously, Monday's game wasn't the best thing this team has played. How do you feel like they responded in practice? Maybe you don't want to put too much into one game, good or bad, but how do you feel like they responded to having a performance like that?
I mean, we have a group that stays focused on the next thing. When you challenge them to step up, they step up the next game. So us getting, the way that happened in Cleveland is definitely not anywhere ideal of how you want to play. But ultimately these are lessons that you will constantly reflect back on, knowing when you see these guys down the road, how you need to play, the way you need to prepare, the focus you need to have, the way the ball needs to move. Those are things we can continue to reflect on, because that's what gives you the experience to know moving forward how good you can be.
Somewhat off topic, but related to the East. Adrian Griffin was fired yesterday. When you see a coach like that get fired and Doc Rivers apparently going to be coming in, what's your reaction when you see that type of movement take place at this part of the season?
Well, to your point, the uncertainty of the NBA, the uncertainty of what you guys just talked about, those are things that are out of our control. So what you can control is how you approach and prepare for every single game, and being on the coaching side of it, I think he did a great job with that group. 30-13 is a heck of a record to have. So, us focusing on us is the most important thing, but you look across the league and you see that every team has different situations and scenarios that they're dealing with. But on the coaching side, he did a great job with them, and whatever direction they decide to go, that's what they're going to have to deal with. But for us, I think we just continue to concentrate on what we need to do to continue to be successful.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, guys.